The woman in the red dress, it was a quiet Saturday morning in Palo Alto. Sundar Pichai, the soft-spoken CEO of Google, stood in his kitchen, pouring tea into two ceramic cups. His wife, Anjali, leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled. "I found a dress," she said. "It's perfect for the charity gala next month." Sundar smiled back. "Then you should get it." Anjali hesitated. "It's single quotes ... expensive. Really expensive." "Anjali," Sundar said gently, "you've supported me through everything. If you love it, go see it." 2 hours later, she was standing in front of one of the most exclusive fashion boutiques in San Francisco. It was a glass building with gold trim, the kind that made you feel like you had to ask permission to breathe. She pushed the door open and walked in. The saleswoman behind the counter didn't look up. Anjali approached slowly. I saw a red dress in your window." The woman finally looked up. She scanned Anjali from head to toe. No makeup, old shoes, a simple cotton dress, nothing expensive, nothing branded. "That dress," the saleswoman said flatly, "is not in your price range." Anjali blinked. I didn't even ask the price. "Let's be honest," the woman interrupted. "We have a certain type of clientele. They don't usually come in ... looking like this." Her voice was calm but sharp, like a knife hidden behind a smile. Anjali's face flushed. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I think you're making a mistake." "No," the woman said, picking up her tablet. "You are... ****. Meanwhile, back at Google headquarters, Sundar was in a board meeting. Charts, graphs, and numbers filled the screens, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about how excited Anjali had been, about how long it had been since she did something for herself. He pulled out his phone and texted her. "Everything okay?" There was no reply. Anjali left the store quietly. She didn't cry, not yet. She just walked down the street, ignoring the noise, the flashing lights, the honking cars. Everything felt distant, cold. She had been invisible before. Growing up in a small town in India, wearing her sister's hand-me-downs, sharing one textbook between 4 students. But this was different. She sat on a bench in front of a bakery. She looked down at her shoes. Old leather, cracked at the seams. She had always told herself that being kind mattered more than being seen. But now, she wasn't so sure. Hours passed. The sun began to dip behind the hills. Sundar finished his meeting and called her again. Still no answer. His chest tightened. He left the office without saying a word. When he found her, she was still on that bench, quiet, distant. She didn't even look up. "Anjali," he said softly. She looked at him, and something in her eyes shattered him. Not anger, not sadness. Something worse, the absence of both. What happened? He asked. She told him everything. Slowly, carefully, like she was afraid it would sound silly out loud. But to Sundar, it didn't sound silly at all. It sounded familiar. He remembered the first time he walked into an American classroom and someone laughed at his accent. He remembered the job interview, where the recruiter looked him up and down and said, "You're from where?" He remembered and he knew **** the next morning. Something unexpected happened. The story of the boutique incident leaked out. Someone had filmed it. A girl in the store, hidden behind sunglasses and a coffee cup. She had posted the clip online. Just a few seconds, enough to capture the moment when the saleswoman turned away and said, "We have standards here." The internet exploded. People shared the video with captions like, "You never know who you're turning away." Humility costs nothing. But then things got stranger. Someone recognized Anjali. "Wait, is that Sundar Pichai's wife?" The comments multiplied. News anchors called it a lesson in prejudice. Influencers made apology videos too. Women they'd ignored in stores. Even the boutique issued a formal statement. But by then, the story had taken on a life of its own. And that's when Sundar made a quiet decision. He wasn't going to let this fade into the news cycle. Not this. Time. Asterisk, asterisk that night. He walked into the boutique. Alone. He didn't wear a suit. No assistants. No photographers. Just Sundar in a hoodie and jeans. The same saleswoman was at the counter. She didn't recognize him. Could I help you? She asked, her tone cool and flat. He looked around. I'm looking for a red dress. For someone? She asks, scanning. Him again. We have a waiting list. Custom fitting. Takes time. Sundar smiled softly. I can wait. Are you sure you're in the right place? He didn't answer right away. Then he leaned closer and said, You asked my wife the same thing yesterday. The woman's face changed. The blood drained from it. And then he said something she would never forget. As sometimes, respect means seeing someone before you know who they are. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't get angry. But in that moment, everything stopped. Asterisk, asterisk outside. The streetlights flickered on. A delivery truck rumbled by, and the woman in the red dress walked in. Not Anjali. Someone else. Someone who would unknowingly change everything again. Asterisk, the echo of quiet choice for days. The internet had buzzed with the clip. Millions watched it, millions commented. But Anjali? She stayed silent. Not a single post. Not a single interview. She didn't want attention. She just wanted the moment to disappear, to go back to a quiet life with her family, where who she was never had to be defended. But the world had other plans. And Sundar? He had made his choice. He was a man who rarely spoke unless the words mattered. But this time, he knew silence would speak the wrong message. So he began to write. Not a tweet, not a press release, but a letter. Something old-fashioned. Something honest. He wrote it late at night, long after the house had gone still, while the soft hum of the dishwasher played like a lullaby in the background. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he and Anjali used to calculate grocery expenses as students, wondering if they had enough for both rice and vegetables. Now, he was the CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the world. But something still hurt just as deeply. He started the letter with a story. Not about the dress, not about the boutique, but about a train ride in India when he was 12. He and his mother had taken a long journey across the country to visit his uncle. They had no seats reserved and had to stand the entire night. A man in a clean white shirt had refused to let his mother sit, even when she nearly fainted from heat. Sundar never forgot that man's eyes, full of pride, empty of compassion. He wrote about how small you feel when someone makes you invisible. How deeply it carves into your memory. Then he wrote about Anjali, not the wife of a CEO, not a woman wearing a red dress, but a girl who had waited outside his engineering classroom every day just to catch a glimpse of him. A girl who had typed his applications for him, proofread his essays, and shared every tiny success with the kind of joy that made it feel 10 times bigger. Respect, Sundar wrote, is not about what you wear. It's about what you carry in your heart. He ended the letter with a simple promise to use the moment, not for revenge, not for clout, but for something greater, to start a quiet movement, one that didn't shout on social media, but whispered in the decisions we make every day. He hit send. The next morning. The letter went live on Google's internal blog. Within hours, it was everywhere. News anchors read it out loud on live television. Teachers used it in classrooms. Business leaders forwarded it to their teams with messages like, this is the kind of leadership we need. But still, Sundar kept his head down. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to be a better man. Asterisk, asterisk in another part of the city. The boutique was in chaos. The video had triggered an avalanche of angry calls. People demanded apologies. Some swore never to shop there again. Others demanded the name of the saleswoman. The store manager, a woman named Claire, didn't sleep for 3 days. She wrote and rewrote her apology note until the words blurred into each other. But it wasn't until she saw the letter, Sundar's letter, that something shifted. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt shame, and something else she hadn't felt in a long time. The need to do something. Right. So she reached out to Sundar. Not with a press pitch or a public plea, but with a handwritten note Dot inside. She apologized Dot not just for the dress, but for every small cruelty that had become normal in her world. She told him about the pressure to sell, the pressure to perform, the pressure to judge every customer by what they wore and how they walked. We became experts at making people feel less, she wrote, and we called it taste. She ended with an offer. Come back, she wrote. Bring her. Let me try again? Asterisk at first. Sundar wasn't sure. He showed the note to Anjali. She read it slowly, twice. Then she looked at him and nodded. Not for the dress, she said, but for the lesson. So the next day, they returned. The boutique was quieter this time. No crowds, no flashing cameras. Just soft music playing from hidden speakers and the scent of fresh flowers. Claire was waiting at the door. She was older than Anjali had expected. Not sharp like the saleswoman, softer. Tired Dot she walked toward. Them slowly Dot no security, Dot no distance, Dot she folded her hands and bowed her head. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracking. I failed you, and I failed who I wanted to be. Anjali didn't speak for a moment. She looked around the store. Same walls, same mannequins, but something felt different. Maybe it was Claire's voice. Maybe it was Sundar's presence. Maybe it was just the truth finally being seen. Asterisk. She looked back at Claire. Will you promise me something? Claire nodded. Anything. Hire someone who doesn't look the part, Anjali said, and let her rise. Claire nodded again. And this time there were tears. Asterisk, they didn't buy the dress. They didn't need to. They left the store hand in hand, walking quietly back to their car. But as they reached the corner, a young woman stopped them. She looked nervous. Maybe early 20s. Messy hair, oversized coat, eyes full of hesitation, double quotes, Mrs. Pichai. She asked Angel. I turned. Yes. The girl looked down, pulled something from her bag. A little envelope. Crumpled at the edges. I work at a community center, she said. We saw what happened. We've been trying to teach girls that they matter, no matter where they come from, but sometimes they stop believing us. She held out the envelope. Would you speak to them? Just once? Anjali took the envelope slowly. The girl smiled, then walked away before either of them could reply. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. We teach confidence, but they live in a world that still whispers they're not enough. Maybe your voice could be louder. Anjali looked at Sundar. He looked back. Neither said a word, but something had changed again. Not because of the boutique not even because of the dress, but because when someone feels unseen, sometimes the only answer is to show up anyway. Asterisk. But across the city, in a quiet office high above the ground, someone else was watching the story unfold. Someone who knew Sundar. Someone who hadn't spoken to him in years. And that person? They were about to make a phone call, one that would open an old door. One that Sundar thought had been shut forever. Asterisk, the voice from the past. Message came through on a Sunday afternoon. Sundar was sitting by the window, sunlight casting along shadows across the living room floor. Anjali had just returned from her talk at the community center. She was up changing out of her simple blue kurta, still glowing from the hugs of dozens of young girls who had, for the first time, seen someone like them in the spotlight. Sundar could still hear their laughter echoing in his ears, innocent and powerful all at once. But the moment shifted when his phone vibrted. A name flashed on the screen. Arun. Meta. He hadn't seen or heard from Arun in almost 15 years. They had been close once. Thick as brothers. Both from Chennai, both engineering students, both dreamers who used to sit on the dorm roof at midnight talking about changing the world. But their paths had split. Sundar had left for the US with a scholarship and a suitcase of books. Arun had stayed behind. Brilliant, ambitious, but heavier with bitterness each year. The last time they had spoken was tense. Arun had accused him of forgetting where he came from, and now, out of nowhere, he had sent a message. Can we talk? It's urgent and personal. Sundar stared at the screen. He hesitated for a long time, then, without replying. He tapped the call icon. Asterisk, asterisk, Arun answered on the first ring. His voice was rougher than Sundar remembered. But still, unmistakably his. You didn't change your number. Arun said quietly, I didn't think you'd ever call. Sundar replied. There was silence, then a deep breath. I saw the letter, Arun said. And the video, and Anjali. Sundar waited. You said something in that letter? Arun continued, voice slower now. About remembering how it felt to be made small. How sometimes silence is the loudest cruelty. That hit me. Sundar said nothing. Not yet. I've been working on something, Arun said, voice picking up pace now. For years. A platform. A way to bring access to young minds in villages, the kind who never get a shot. I built a prototype. I've tested it. I even launched a few pilot programs, but nobody listens to someone like me. I don't have your name. I don't have your reach. His voice cracked. I need your help. Asterisk, asterisk for a moment. Sundar said nothing. He looked outside the window. A bird landed on the edge of the railing. Fragile, uncertain. He remembered Arun, the boy who once stayed up all night, helping him prepare for a physics exam, even though he didn't need to. The friend who once gave up his seat on the only bus home so Sundar could visit his father in the hospital. But he also remembered the last phone call. You became them? Arun had said back then. He forgot who you were. He had hung up before Sundar could reply. Asterisk, asterisk. Send me everything, Sundar said finally. Every document. Every file. I want to see what you built. Arun exhaled, slow and shaky. You're really going to help? I don't know yet, Sundar said honestly. But I'll listen. Asterisk, asterisk, 2 days later. A package arrived. Not digital. Files. A physical binder. The kind nobody used anymore. Inside were printed diagrams, handwritten notes, and a letter on lined paper. I didn't send this online, Arun had written, because I wanted you to feel it in your hands, like we used to do. Like when we passed each other our project drafts under the hostel door. Sundar read every word. The platform was raw, unpolished, but powerful. It used minimal data, voice-guided modules, and a simple touchscreen interface. It could run on the cheapest smartphones. The idea wasn't to replace teachers. It was to help where there were none. To give confidence to kids who had never touched a computer. Sundar felt something stirred deep in his chest. A kind of fire that had grown quiet over the years. He showed it to Anjali that night. She read through the material slowly. This could change lives, she said. Sundar nodded. I know. But if you help him, she added, it won't just be business. It'll be personal. Are you ready for that? He didn't answer, but inside, he already knew the answer. Asterisk, asterisk, a week later. They met in person. They chose a quiet park near Stanford. No press. No cameras. When Sundar saw Arun walking toward him, time collapsed. His hair was streaked with gray now. His shirt had ink stains on the pocket. His shoulders were slouched. But his eyes burned with the same defiant hunger they'd always had. You look older, Arun said with a small smile. So do you, Sundar replied. They sat down on a bench, two old friends trying to remember how to be that again. I didn't call for pity, Arun said quickly. I didn't come to give it, Sundar replied. They both laughed, softly, but real. Then Arun grew serious. Why now? He asked, after all this time. Sundar looked at him. Because I remembered, he said, that I didn't get here alone. And maybe it's time to build something that gives back more than it takes. Arun blinked, looked down. When he looked back up, his voice was trembling. I've been angry for so long, he whispered. At you, at myself, at the world. I know, Sundar said. But now, Arun asked, now what do we do? Sundar leaned forward, clasping his hands together. We build, he said. But we don't just build tech. We build trust. And we start small. Asterisk, asterisk, they launched the project 6 weeks later. No press release. No brand name. Just two friends, calling in every favor they had, convincing small village schools in Tamil Nadu to try a pilot version. They partnered with local teachers. They translated everything into Tamil, Hindi, Bengali, and 5 more languages. They worked late into the night, tweaking every module. Anjali helped record the voice instructions, so the children would hear a gentle, familiar tone. The first time they saw a student, a girl named Kavitha, aged 10, open the app and smile with curiosity. Sundar felt something deep shift inside him. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about recognition. It was about the quiet power of giving someone a chance. Asterisk, asterisk, but not everyone was pleased. As the program gained traction. A competitor took notice. A large education tech company, flashy, aggressive, and global, had just expanded into India. They saw the pilot as a threat. Worse, they saw Sundar's quiet involvement as a betrayal. They reached out with warnings, lawyers, even offers to buy out the idea. Sundar refused. So did Arun. But then, one night, a fire broke out in one of the pilot centers. No injuries, but the damage was clear. A message had been sent, and it wasn't. Subtle. Asterisk, asterisk, ARUN called Sundar. The next morning, his voice was shaking. They're trying to scare us. Then we don't back down, Sundar said. They have lawyers. We have notebooks. They have ads. We have students. And what if they come for you? Arun asked. You have everything to lose. Sundar was silent for a long time. He said quietly, not if we do this right. But somewhere deep inside him, he knew doing the right thing didn't always protect you, and someone close was about to be caught in a crossfire. Asterisk. When silence costs everything. House was quiet. Anjali. I stood in the kitchen, slowly stirring a pot of dal. The soft scent of turmeric and cumin rose into the air, wrapping around her like a blanket. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the evening breeze, their shadows dancing on the window panes. The calm should have brought comfort. But it didn't. She could feel it, that weight in the air. A tension she hadn't felt in years. Sundar had changed, not in the way people expected. He was still kind, still gentle. But lately, his silences were longer. His shoulders carried something invisible but heavy. He didn't talk about the threats. He didn't talk about the fire. But Anjali saw it in his eyes every night when he came home and kissed her on the forehead, holding her a little longer than usual. They had spent a lifetime climbing together. Now, it felt like the mountain was crumbling under their feet. Asterisk across the city. Sundar sat at a table in a small co-working space. Not Google's offices, not some polished boardroom. Just a plain shared desk surrounded by faded posters and the soft hum of broken air conditioning. Asterisk. Beside him sat Arun, hunched over his laptop, scrolling through photos of the damaged learning center. Burned walls. Melted screens. Children's drawings turned to ash. They didn't speak for a while. Finally, Sundar broke the silence. How much? To rebuild? Arun didn't look up. More than we have. And the data backups? We lost 2 modules. We can recover most of it. Sundar nodded, staring at the wall in front of him. There was part of him that wanted to walk away, not because he was afraid, but because he had people to protect. Google was watching. His board of directors had already sent a carefully worded memo. We respect your passion, but please consider the potential risk to our brand alignment. In other words, be quiet. But he couldn't, because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Kavitha. He saw her smile. He saw her pointing to the screen and saying, I want to be an engineer, like a lady on The Voice. She meant Anjali, and that memory was louder than any warning. Asterisk, asterisk. Anjali found out about the fire 3 days later. Not from Sundar, but from a forwarded message in a parents' group chat. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked into his home office and placed her phone on his desk. Sundar looked up. Their eyes met. You aren't going to tell me? She asked softly. He closed his laptop. I didn't want to worry you. You think I'm not already worried? Her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to, he sighed. I thought if I could just fix it quietly. Sundar, she interrupted, stepping closer. This is bigger than us now. He looked really looked, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. She wasn't just worried. She was scared. And under that fear determination anjal, I had always been quiet, always in the background. But when she believed in something, she didn't back down. We do this together. She said, asterisk, asterisk, the next day. She made a choice. She went back to the boutique, not to buy a dress, but to speak. Player. The manager welcomed her in. The boutique was nearly empty now. After the video went viral, business had slowed. The place felt colder, quieter, like the luxury had been stripped bare, revealing just bricks and shelves. Why are you here? Claire asked, genuinely confused. At NJAL, I stood in the center of the store and said, because stories can end here or begin here. And then she told them everything. The boutique staff, the few curious shoppers, the young assistant folding scarves in the corner. She told them about the girl named KVITA about a era UN about app about what it meant to be told. You don't belong, and to turn that pain into purpose. You judged me because I didn't look. The part, Anjali said. But what if we judged children that way? What dreams would we crush before they could begin? She didn't shout. She didn't blame. She simply let the truth hang in the air. By the end, the girl folding scarves had stopped folding. Claire's eyes were full of tears. How can we help? Claire whispered, NJL. I smiled. Hire differently. Serve differently. And maybe donate a few tablets to some girls who will change the world one day. Asterisk, asterisk, the story spread again. Not through tabloids, but through teachers, parents, and quiet whispers on train rides. People who had once dismissed the boutique incident as just another viral clip began to see the pattern beneath it. The invisible net that kept some people out and others in. They didn't call it a movement. They just called it right. But the pushback came to anonymous threats. Spam attacks on the platform. Rumors that Sundar was abusing his influence for personal gain. One night, his Google account was hacked. Briefly, enough to scare the legal team. The board called an emergency meeting. They wanted an answer. Was he going to back off? They phrased it differently, of course. We must prioritize our responsibilities to stakeholders. We cannot risk diluting our core focus. The cause is better supported independently. Sundar listened. And then he stood up. I became who I am because someone invested in my potential. Not because I looked right, not because I had resources, but because someone chose to see me. He paused. If that's our responsibility, then maybe I'm not the right person to lead this company anymore. The room went silent. He didn't storm out. He just walked away. Asterisk, asterisk at home. He told Anjali everything. She listened. And when he finished, she didn't say much. She just reached for his hand. Whatever happens, she whispered, we don't stop. Asterisk, asterisk, but the next day, something unexpected happened. A message arrived at their doorstep. No return address. Just an envelope. Inside. A single sheet of paper. Typed. Got cold. And at the bottom, a photo of KAV crossed out with red ink. Asterisk, asterisk. Anjali froze. She stared at the image. Her breath caught in her throat. Sundar took it from her hands and read the note. If you want to protect your legacy, stay out of places that don't belong to you. The paper shook in his hands. This wasn't a threat to him anymore. It was to her. To the children. To everything they were trying to build. And suddenly, all the kindness, all the grace, all the restraint, it didn't feel like enough. Because now someone had crossed a line, and Sundar knew. This fight wasn't just about opportunity anymore. It was about protection. And sometimes the quietest men can roar the loudest when someone touches what they love. Asterisk, the quiet storm. It was just past midnight when Sundar sat alone in the study. The lights off, the glow of his laptop casting shadows across his face. Outside, the world slept. Inside, his thoughts didn't. The letter with the photo of Kavitha still sat on the edge of the desk, untouched since he opened it. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away, and he couldn't put it out of sight. It wasn't fear that kept it there. It was the reminder someone out there had crossed a line. Not with politics, not with business, but with a child. A child who had never asked for this. A child who had only smiled when the learning app first said her name. That smile had lit a fire in Sundar Dot, but now that fire had turned to something else. Not rage, not yet, but something colder. More focused. More dangerous. Dot resolve. Dot asterisk asterisk he picked. Up the phone and called RUN. Dot. It was 12:17 a.m. I'm awake. Arun answered on the first ring, his voice tight. You saw it? I saw it. What do we do? Sundar looked out the window. The moon hung low, heavy in the sky. It reminded him of the train station back home in Chennai, where he used to wait for the 5:20 local train in the dark, listening to the quiet ticking of time before the day began. We fight back, he said, but not with fire. How then? Arun asked, with proof. Asterisk, asterisk, the next morning. Sundar called in a favor. Dot, not from Google. Dot, from someone older. Someone with no social media. Someone who owed him nothing. A retired investigative journalist named Devika, who once uncovered corruption in a steel conglomerate and disappeared from the public eye after refusing to sell her story. They met in a quiet cafe in Berkeley. She arrived with a pen tucked behind her ear, her notebook already open, eyes sharp behind glasses that looked too big for her face. You always call when it's serious, she said without preamble. This one's not just serious, Sundar replied. It's personal. He handed her the envelope, the note, the photo. She studied it carefully, then looked up. You want me to find out who sent it? Yes. You know that might dig up things you don't want to see, right? He nodded. I'm ready. She didn't say anything else. Dot just took a photo of the note, folded it, and slid it into her bag. Give me 7 days. Asterisk, asterisk, while Devika began digging. Sundar and Arun shifted into overdrive. Dot expanded the pilot program, quietly. Through encrypted communications, anonymous donations, and local partnerships, they found NGOs who believed in the mission and didn't need credit. They trained volunteers to distribute devices. Under different names. Dot, the goal wasn't to win headlines. The goal was to stay ahead of. Whoever was trying to stop them. Dot, but still, something felt wrong. Dot, it wasn't just about corporate sabotage anymore. This was deeper, more personal. Dot, someone knew their moves before they made them. Someone close. Asterisk. And then, on the 5th day, Devika called. Meet me now. They met in the same cafe. This time, her face was different. Still calm, still collected, but her eyes carried something darker. I traced the source of the letter, she said. Who was it? She slid her notebook toward him. Dot, inside was a name. Dot, a name Sundar knew well. Dot, Rajiv, Kanna. Dot, a senior executive at a partner company. A man Sundar had once mentored, had even recommended for a leadership position. Rajiv had been charismatic, smooth talking, always quick with a compliment, and quicker with a strategy. He had also once been rejected for a role on Sundar's team. Too aggressive, Sundar had thought, too willing to cut corners, and apparently too willing to carry a grudge. He's been funding disinformation campaigns against you, Devika said, through shell companies, spreading rumors, undermining trust in the pilot program. In that letter, it came from one of his hired intermediaries. Asterisk. Sundar leaned back in his chair. The betrayal felt sharp, not just because it was cruel, but because it was calculated. Dot, he had trusted Rajiv, and Rajiv had taken that trust and turned it into a weapon. Asterisk, asterisk, when he returned home that night, he found Anjali sitting on the patio. Dot, she was sipping tea, wrapped in a shawl, looking up at the sky. He sat down beside her. She didn't ask what was wrong. She already knew. He told her everything. She listened quietly. Asterisk, when he finished. She reached for his hand and said, You know what you have to do. He nodded. But it's going to get louder, he said. Messier. Then let it, she replied. Because the only thing worse than being attacked is being afraid to respond. Asterisk, asterisk, 2 days later, Sundar walked into the boardroom. At Google headquarters. Every senior leader was there. They expected a report. They got a speech. Asterisk. Sundar stood at the front of the room and told them everything, not just about Rajiv, not just about the threat, but about the project, about Kavitha, about the hundreds of children now learning because two friends dared to try. We built an empire on knowledge, he said, and now we have a chance to give it back, not in stock shares, not in profits, in opportunity. The room was silent until one hand clapped dot, then another dot, and another, until the room echoed with applause. Some faces stayed cold dot, others warm dot, but Sundar didn't wait for consensus. He turned and walked out. He had already decided asterisk asterisk that evening. He released a public letter dot, not from Google dot, from himself. He named no one dot, but he told the story, the real one. He spoke about fear, about legacy, about what it meant to stand for something when it wasn't convenient. The letter ended with a promise. This isn't just about me. This is about every child told they don't belong, every voice ignored, every potential wasted. And I promise you, we are just getting started. The letter went viral within hours. Dot, not because of controversy dot, but because of truth. Asterisk asterisk. The next day, Rajiv resigned dot, no formal reason dot, no press conference dot, just a quiet exit. And a company-wide email that read like a final chapter, but Sundar didn't. Gloat dot, he didn't celebrate because this wasn't victory, that this was survival, and there was still work to do. Asterisk asterisk. A week later, Sundar and Anjali returned to Tamil and a DU dot to the village where the first pilot program had launched. They didn't arrive. With photographers dot, they came in a small car, dusty from the road, carrying bags of devices in the trunk dot KVHD. She ran up to them with a wide smile, holding up a worksheet she had completed on the app. I know what a server is now, she said proudly. And how the internet works. Sundar knelt beside her. You know what the internet really is? Yes, dot. She shook her head. It's a way to make your voice bigger. She grinned dot, then said, I want to build my own app one day. Anjali smiled. And you will, she said, and we'll help you. Asterisk asterisk. But just as the visit ended, Sundar's phone buzzed again. Dot, a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words. You're not done. He showed it to Arun, who stood beside the car. What do you think it means? Sundar asked. Arun looked out across the dusty fields. Then said quietly, I think someone else is coming. Asterisk, the seeds we leave behind the sun was setting over Tamil. Nadu, when the message came through. You're not done. 2 words. Plain, but they carried weight. And Sundar felt it, not as a threat this time, but as a truth. Something unspoken had shifted in the last few months. What began as a personal insult in a luxury boutique had unraveled into something far deeper, far more dangerous, and far more powerful. And now, in the fading light, with dust rising from the village roads and the scent of burning firewood in the air, he understood this was never just about him. Never just about Arun. Never even just about KAVITA dot. It was about the next 1,000 Kavithas. The next million dot in a system that stood in their way. Asterisk asterisk. They drove back to Chennai in silence. Arun sat in the passenger seat, fingers drumming anxiously on the dashboard. Anjali sat in the back, eyes closed, resting her head against the window. Exhausted from the visit, but peaceful in a way Sundar hadn't seen in weeks. Sundar gripped the wheel, the message replaying in his mind. You're not done. He didn't know who had sent it. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was encouragement. Maybe it was just a whisper from fate itself. But deep down, he understood what it meant. The fight wasn't over. The fire in the learning center may have been an act of sabotage, but it had also ignited something bigger in the children, in the parents, even in the local teachers. The program had spread quietly and rapidly to over 30 villages. People were sharing devices, passing down knowledge like stories, like sacred traditions. And with each module, each recorded voice, each child that pressed their finger against a screen and saw a possibility bloom, the system trembled a little more. But now, the resistance had evolved, not just from one rival, from a network. Asterisk asterisk Devika. The retired journalist reached out again. She had been tracking the threads behind the sabotage. What she found wasn't a single puppet master, but a tangled web of interests. Investment firms tied to expensive international education companies. Political lobbies trying to control digital curriculum standards. Former executives who saw community-led learning as a threat to their revenue models. And at the center of that web, not a name, not a company dot, but a pattern, gatekeeping. Disguised as quality control dot suspicion, dressed up as market analysis dot exclusion, branded as efficiency dot DEBIKA. Didn't give Sundar a list of enemies. She gave him something worse dot, a system that had quietly thrived on keeping people like Kavitha in their place dot, and now that system knew his name. Asterisk, asterisk. What do we do? Arun asked one morning, pacing across Sundar's living room in Palo Alto, worn-out slippers dragging against the wooden floor. They're too big. They're everywhere. And if they can't buy us out, they'll try to bury us. Sundar didn't answer immediately. He was looking at Anjali, who sat cross-legged on the floor, reviewing student feedback from the villages. Notes from girls who had written things like, "I want to teach my mother what I learned," and "I want to build a school where no girl has to ask for permission." Sundar finally said, "Then we stop being the product." Arun looked confused. "What do you mean?" "We stop asking for a seat at their table," Sundar said quietly, "and we build our own." Asterisk, asterisk. The next phase began in secret. They started by decoupling the app from all major digital marketplaces. They created a version that didn't need approval from any corporation. They taught communities how to download and install it directly. Offline modules, low-power hardware, solar chargers. No logins, no permissions, no ads. They partnered with grassroots networks, women's collectives, retired teachers, volunteer engineers. They trained leaders in each region to run it themselves. And no central control. No hierarchy dot. They gave it away. Dot entirely dot. And it spread faster than anything they had ever planned dot in just 4 months. The app was present in 96 villages across South India, and soon after in parts of Nepal and Sri Lanka. Refugees in remote camps began using it. Tribal children in forests. Migrant workers' kids in slums. It wasn't perfect, it was raw. But it was theirs dot, and the best part. They stopped tracking numbers dot because the real success wasn't in downloads dot, it was in stories dot, asterisk, asterisk. One day, Anjali received a letter, a real one, on crumpled paper, written in blue ink, full of spelling errors and heart dot. It was from Kavitha. "Dear Anjali Akka, I told my teacher about how your voice speaks in the tablet. I like how you explain the computer like a friend. I am teaching my brother also. I want to be like you and help people learn. I hope one day I can talk to girls like me and tell them we can become anything. Thank you for seeing me." Anjali folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small wooden box where she kept old photographs and her wedding bangle. She didn't cry, but something inside her grew quiet and warm. Asterisk, asterisk, months passed. The threats faded. The news cycle moved on. But the work never stopped. Not in the dusty villages or the quiet apartments or the makeshift classrooms under banyan trees. Not in Sundar's heart, because the truth was, this wasn't just a project anymore. It was a promise to that boy who once stood on a train in Chennai, clutching a bag of borrowed textbooks. A promise to the girl who once stood in a boutique, told she didn't belong. A promise to every voice that had been silenced, ignored, or overlooked because someone decided their dreams didn't fit into the right package. Asterisk, asterisk, 1 year later, Sundar was invited to speak at a global summit. He was supposed to talk about innovation, about AI and the future of search dot, but when he took the stage, he didn't talk about any of that dot. He talked about KAI dot, about RUN dot, about Anjali. And then he said this: "Technology is not just code and machines. It's permission to dream, to reach, to be seen. We must ask ourselves every day, who are we giving that permission to? And who are we denying it?" The room went silent dot, and then people stood dot, not all dot, but enough dot, and Sundar stepped down, not to applause, but to peace. Asterisk asterisk back in the village. A small girl in a dusty schoolyard opened an old tablet and tapped the screen. Anjali's voice began to speak. And somewhere far away, under a sky full of stars, Sundar looked out at the world, his hands in his pockets, a soft smile on his face, because he finally understood. Some legacies are not built in glass towers or stock charts. They are built in hearts, and they are planted like seeds. In the quietest places where no one is looking, asterisk.